Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Okay, so inshallah today we're going to be actually answering a criticism made by some orientalists regarding the Quran, where they say that there's a linguistic error in it. Now in front of us we have an ayah which they claim contains an error. This is in Surah An-Nisa, and I've highlighted the words that I want to speak about. Now the verse says, "But those firm in knowledge among them and the believers believe in what has been revealed to you, O Muhammad, and what was revealed before you, and the establishers of prayer especially." Now what's happening in this ayah is we have joining, or what's known as atf, between here ar-rasikhuna, and the rasikhuna are those who are firm. Firm in what? Fil ilm. And then here this wow joins on al-mu'minuna. So notice they're all in the rafa' state. And then here there's joining again. Wa muqimina as-salat. Now if this was joined in the same state, it should be wal muqimuna as-salat. Because even the attributes mentioned after, mu'tuna az-zakat, it's rafa' in the rafa' state, and al-mu'minuna. So all these are marfu', and this is mansub. So what they say is this is a mistake, because if you join words with the conjunction the waw, they should all be in the same state. Now that's true, but there's actually a rhetorical device being used here. And this device is not new just to the Quran. This was used in ancient poetry as well. And what's happening here is we have a hidden verb, amdahu, or akhussu, or something along those lines. I praise, or I specify. So here there's a spotlight on this particular attribute of those who are the establishers of prayer. And that's why here the translation is especially. So how it should be, if this was actually mentioned, would be amdahu al-muqimina as-salata. So here, wa, there's a verb here, amdahu. Therefore this will be the maf'ul bihi. So what do I praise? I praise al-muqimina as-salata, the establishers of prayer. Now, one of the criticisms made by Orientalists is the following. This is one of the Orientalists who criticizes the Quran. Obviously that's his job, to find mistakes in the Quran. Otherwise he'd be a Muslim. What he says is the following. The word muqimin should be muqimun. He continues on, he says, the word should be declined by the rafa' sign, like the other nouns in the sentence. Indeed, the two nouns before it, rasikhuna and mu'minuna, and the nouns after it, mu'tuna, are declined correctly. Then listen to what he says. He says, some have argued that this word was declined as such to distinguish and praise the act of praying. It's actually not doing that, it's actually distinguishing this attribute of this believer who does this at all times. But then what he says is, but the scholar Ibn al-Khatib, I don't know who he's referring to, says that this is a sick reasoning. And he's giving a reference here. I don't know what he means by sick reasoning. Maybe he means it's not eloquent, or it doesn't make sense. But anyway, he says, such reasoning defies logic. Why would one distinguish prayer, which is a branch of religion, and not faith, which is the fundamental and root of the religion? He fails to realize, actually, the Quran uses words to perfection, based on the context and based on the subject matter of the surah as a whole. So here there's praise for these people, al-muqimina as-salah. Now let's try to find out why this is so. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put the spotlight on these people? The reason why is because of the subject matter of the surah itself, where salat is emphasized greatly. Here muqimeen denotes a state that one is always establishing the prayer at all times. That's what it means by using the ism, rather than saying alladhina yuqimuna as-salah, by using the verb. Let's see why this is so, and also to answer back at this particular criticism. Now, in this very same surah, we have the following ayat. And when you travel throughout the land, there is no blame upon you for shortening the prayer, especially if you fear that those who disbelieve may disrupt or attack you. Indeed, the disbelievers are ever to you a clear enemy. Now here, the kafirin, some people translate that as non-Muslims. Obviously, it doesn't not mean non-Muslims. It's saying kafirin, those who reject faith and who are hostile towards the Muslims. So one needs to distinguish between that. So anyway, let's get back to this. It says, and when you are among them and lead them in prayer, let a group of them stand in prayer with you and let them carry their arms. And when they have prostrated, let them be in position behind you and have the other group come forward, which has not yet prayed, and let them pray with you, taking precaution and carrying their arms. Those who disbelieve wish that you would neglect your weapons and your baggage, so they could come down upon you in one single strike. But there is no blame upon you if you are troubled by rain or are ill for putting down your arms. But take precaution. Indeed, Allah has prepared for the disbelievers a humiliating punishment. And then it continues on. And when you have completed the prayer, remember Allah standing, sitting, or lying on your sides. When you become secure, re-establish regular prayer. And then this, indeed, prayer has been decreed upon the believers, a decree of specified times. There's emphasis here, Inna as-salata kanat ala al-mu'minina kitaban mawqutan. So this kana, actually kanat, is for permanence at all times, even on the battlefield, as was mentioned earlier. Even when one's own life is in danger, which is probably the hardest of times that one will face in his life, when one's own life is in danger. Yet, we're told to establish the prayer. So see how beautifully Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this section in the surah where those who establish the prayer have been specified. One other point here is, if you go throughout the Quran and find salat being mentioned, the topic of prayer, there's only 2 surahs that talk about prayer the most in the whole Quran. And that's Surah Nisa as well as Surah Al-Baqarah. So one could argue, why wasn't muqimeen as-salat mentioned in Surah Al-Baqarah? Actually, there's another ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah where the same rhetorical device is used. It mentions as-sabirina. So it should be in sabiruna in the rafa state, but sabirina is used. Being patient in extreme poverty and harm, as well as on the battlefield. So they're the 3. So it mentions those who are patient in those aspects, the hardest times. Now another point is in Surah Al-Baqarah, when salat is mentioned, you'll find that zakat is also mentioned. For example, الَّذِينَ يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. Those who establish prayer and give out from what we have provided them. الَّذِينَ أَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ. You actually find this throughout Surah Al-Baqarah. And also, as-salat is also mentioned with sabr. وَاسْتَعِينُوا بِالصَّبْرِ وَالصَّلَاةِ. Seek help in patience and prayer. Another point about this is in Surah Al-Baqarah, we have spending, sadaqah, zakah being mentioned in great detail. In Surah Nisa, the topic of giving and sadaqah and zakat is not mentioned in any detail. And whenever the ayat of salat are mentioned in Surah Nisa, they're mentioned alone. So they're singled out. The same way that in this ayah, it was also singled out. Al-muqimina as-salata.